All right, now, 4 weeks ago, I showed you a 3-minute clip of a podcast between Kerry Newhoff and John Elridge. Just after that, Eric and I went to Cape Town to a Western Cape church leaders meeting, and they showed us the first 20 minutes of that video. And I want to show it to you today, because I believe this is going to help us understand, a lot of us, maybe not all of us, but I believe the majority of us. Because in that meeting down there, over 200 leaders, there was not one person that said, it doesn't really affect me. Everybody, it resonated with everybody. And I believe it's going to do so today as well. It's just going to help us to understand where we are and how we can get out of that and how we can grow stronger in God, okay? So let's just watch this 20-minute video. Thanks.
John, it's so good to have you back. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's really good to see you, and I'm looking forward to catching up. So in addition to your work as a best-selling author and the president of Wild at Heart Ministries, you've counseled thousands of people. And I'd love to know, everything we've been through, and I think we last talked a year or so ago. What are you learning about the human soul in this season?
Yeah, people are very tapped out. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. But we've just been through collectively 2 years of global trauma. And it's just kind to name it and go, look, folks, you take people through high stress situations with no finish line in sight, and you keep changing their normal, and you take away the things they enjoy. It's traumatizing. Okay. And so in order to overcome even good things, the birth of a child, a wedding, you tap into your reserves. So we all tapped into our reserves in order to rally for the pandemic. And you think about leadership. I mean, come on, because the leaders, they had to keep a smile on their face, and they had to keep esprit de corps, and churches had to figure out how to do everything over again, online and mass, no mass, and the tensions and all that. So we're now in a state where we think the pandemic's behind us. We think it's all, it's kind of in the rearview mirror. And people are trying to act like, hey, we're good now, right? We got restaurants back. You can travel. You can go to concerts. We're good. And I'm going, wait. That's like, you don't understand the cascade effect of this kind of a thing. You get 2 years of that. It's going to have a long cascade in the human condition. And so what I'm seeing right now is pretty severe levels of depletion. And I thought I was crazy on this for a while, but I literally, today, I brought in 3 people, mature, people who live reasonably. They understand good soul practices, rhythm of life, that sort of thing. And I just wanted to ask them, how are you doing? What's your condition these days? Talk to me about your reserves. And every single one, all 3 of them were like, oh, I think I'm at about 40%. My functional right now. But the crazy, Kerry, is that the world is acting like we're back and we're fine.
You mentioned reserves, which is really interesting. And I'd love to know, reserves assumes if you're a gas tank in a car, right? Or a battery in a phone. It's like, okay, I was at 100% and now I'm down to 28. I doubt that people were at 100% in 2020. Right? Like you look at our reserves, were we running on fumes before that?
Yes.
What is, so I'd love your comment on that. And then what is the prognosis for long-term stress or long-term trauma? What should maybe let's start with the signs. Like what are the signs that you're at 28%? Because I think a lot of us want to fool ourselves into thinking, I'm fine. Like I'm okay. I'm doing great. But inside there's something ticking.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a bad vacation, and the family doesn't want to talk about it anymore. Everybody's got those stories, right? Where they're like, just don't talk about that one, back in 98. Just don't talk about it. That's what we're trying to do now. But here, so you asked a couple questions. So
Yeah, it was a poorly formed
last
question.
time you and it was awesome. Last time you and I chatted, we were talking about the pace of modern life. And this was pre-pandemic that we were talking about, hey, people are beginning to really burn out just at what the pace of life, the amount of technology, the high level of output. We live in an achievement culture. So if you're not constantly achieving, you live with guilt and shame, and you got to just keep the pedal to the metal. So that was pre-pandemic. So the answer is yes. We came into the pandemic already severely depleted. And then we tapped into our remaining reserves to rally and to educate our kids at home or to work from the kitchen table on Zoom and, everything that everybody had to do. And now I do think we are going to see, here's some of the symptoms. So what is with all of the airline passenger incidents?
Yeah.
Right? So in a pre-pandemic, there were 10 a month globally. So you think that's a lot of traveling. That's a lot of really well-behaved people.
10 incidents a month globally pre-pandemic.
Yes. And in 21, so just last year, there were 500. Okay. In this year, we're already at 350. And you've heard, they're turning around international flights back to their point of origin and to get passengers off the plane. So humanity is not well. But I think as we're talking and leaders are listening, thinking about their people, it's a loss of creativity. I had a unnamed leader of a very popular podcast tell me, he says, look, I just can't create content anymore. He's like, I don't got it. I find it really difficult to be creative. It is the lack of grace for people who fail you, or just irritating people. I just say irritating people. I used to have a little something for irritating people. I could overlook the lady at the grocery line who's in the 15 items or less with 30 items, that gal. I overlook it. She's having a bad day, whatever. Okay. I got nothing for irritating people now. So that would be another sign. The short-term memory loss is a big one.
Wow.
So you pick up your phone, you don't remember who you were going to text, right? Somebody says, hey, did you get that email to me and you're like, I do not even remember what I was supposed to send you. Can you tell me again what you were asking for? So these are actually all classic indications of trauma.
Really?
Okay, trauma fragments. Oh yeah, trauma fragments the brain. It fragments attention, short-term memory loss, exhaustion. People are going to bed really early.
Yeah.
And people are relieved when you don't ask them out to dinner.
Right.
Right? Like it was...
Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was Memorial Day weekend here in the U.S., and a friend of mine confided to me, he says, I am so glad no one's throwing a barbecue because I don't want to go. So you have a diminished desire for human contact. And when you are in human contact, you've got less to offer. So these are all symptoms of the battered human condition going forward now. And what I'm concerned about is that so that's our state, that's our shared state of being, but everyone's back to their normal life asking them for 100%. Your kids are asking you for 100%. Your company's asking you for 100%. Your church is asking you for 100%, but you aren't at 100%.
That's a problem. I'm running your symptoms through the last week. And you and I were checking in and I said, I'm pretty good. I would say I don't know, 6 or 7. Actually, that dinner I was telling you about with friends last weekend, I gave it a 6.5 out of 10 on a scale. And the reason it's probably not an 8, I was out with a friend who I haven't seen in a few months. and we were out doing stuff, and he was being a little bit argumentative with me just over a couple of things. Like, I won't go into details. And I'm kind of used to it. He has opinions on stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine. It's not a big deal. But then I found myself getting kind of up in it a little bit. And like, I finally just said to him, have you read anything on this? Like, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, normally I would just let that go.
Yes.
And then my wife had somebody who kind of went ballistic on her in a parking lot at Costco because she didn't put the cart away right, the shopping cart away right, or something like that. And it's little things. And we're like, what kind of weird thing is this that we have? And I pulled some leaders. We're in this thing now called the Art of Leadership Academy. And I just said, hey, compared to a year ago, how are you feeling? And the majority said that they are about the same or more tired and more depleted. And it was, a small, like 46% said they were slightly more encouraged than they were a year ago. But it's wobbly right now. It really is.
And a year ago was not a great time.
No, it wasn't, right? It's like, okay, so you're no longer burning in the center of the pit of hell. You're just a little bit outside.
Right. Yeah, it's like
gosh.
asking soldiers at the front, hey, was it better last week? Yeah.
And, I had this guy working on my house, and he was going to do a project. He was doing 2 projects for us. And I met him in the driveway last week. And I said, yeah, when we were away, did you do project number 1? And he looked at me like I had 12 heads. And he's my age. He had no memory of it. And then and it was a long conversation. Like, he came to my house. We looked at the house. We discussed how he was going to do it. It was about a half-hour conversation. And then finally I came back to him and he goes, you know what? I do remember now, and I just totally forgot.
Yes.
He wrote it. And I didn't know that was a sign of trauma.
It is classic. And it is very, very common right now. I have a staff of 18, and I'm having to overlook all sorts of simply forgotten things. I forgot that email that you sent me. I forgot you asked me to do that. I forgot we committed to, So it's the cascade effect now. This is where we are. You don't just walk away from 2 years of intensity, even if you don't want to call it global trauma, 2 years of intensity and uncertainty, and just bounce back.
Yeah. So let's get into recovery and prognosis. And I know we'll spend a lot of time there, but you think about early childhood trauma or a traumatic car accident or traumatic illness or the death of a spouse. There's sort of a recovery window and predictable signs and stages, etc. What about for the human condition at this point? What should we be looking for moving forward? Symptoms in ourselves and then paths to healing.
Yeah. So right now, what we're looking at is global denial, which is symptom 1. That didn't happen to me. I'm fine. And they're predicting this summer to be the biggest travel summer ever. So people are rushing out to get joy and get, happiness back, and they're traveling overseas again, but it won't work because a couple weeks at the beach doesn't heal trauma. And it doesn't heal 2 years of high-level stress. Okay, so I think what we're going to see, you see the initial stage of denial, which is where we are right now. Everything's fine, don't talk. We just don't even want to talk about it, right? Let's get it in the rearview mirror and let's get on with things. But then the things that we were just discussing, you're going to see the high levels of anger in human behavior. You're going to see the fragmented attention. The diminished capacities. We are at diminished capacities right now. People's performance levels, that kind of thing. That's not going to climb up unless people take care of their soul. The reserves will continue to go down because the math is really simple on this. In order to replenish reserves, you have to have periods in your life where more is coming in than's going out.
Right.
This is why people like weekends. You're not on email. You're not, because you have a little bit more coming in. You're gonna, enjoy dinner on the deck, or you're gonna take a walk in the park. You have more coming in than's going out. You have to arrange for that in order to replenish reserves. Okay, if you don't do that, then what we're going to see, Carrie, is continued diminished human performance, diminished ability for social connection. People find social connection exhausting right now. And so I'd rather not, and so they'll back away even more, some more isolation. And it doesn't bode well if we don't care for our own souls and the souls of the people who are in our care.
How do you rebuild? I want to drill down on social connection, because I think that's a really good point. There was a point in 2021 where I said to my wife, Tony, we're just going to say yes to every invitation that comes along the way, right? Yes. It's like we were so hungry, and we had a bit more of an extended lockdown in Canada, like more similar to California, New York, or maybe Colorado than Texas or Florida, right? So, we were just hungry for it. But then I've also had the feeling where I read a piece, I don't know if it's in the New Yorker or Atlantic or whatever, but about last minute cancellations are becoming all the vogue. Somebody develops a little cough. It's like, you know what, we're not coming tonight. And it's creating this global relief. So I felt it on both sides, right?
Wow. There it is. See, that people experience relief when they get out of something versus going. Like going's not the joy, not going's the joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's depleted. That's depleted reserves there.
So how do you rebuild social volition? And I'm also really concerned because we've become so fractionalized. We're having a number of conversations this year just about the polarization on this podcast, about polarization. And, even the psychology of, we had to be suspicious for a season of each other, because if I met with you face to face, you could infect me or I could infect you.
Yeah.
And that was a fairly new thought to me. I forget who shared that with me. And I'm like, you're right. Like we were trained for a period to see each other as the enemy. And then we went through an election cycle or two, and we realized more people were crazy than we thought, and they think we're crazy. And we got into conspiracy theories. And we're socially depleted, where our reserves are depleted. So how do you begin to rebuild social resiliency, capital, desire, even a longing to connect with other humans again?
The good news is, I think the longing's there because you were feeling it yourselves.
Yeah.
Let's say yes to everything. We're made to connect. And so the good news is that deep desire is still there. You have to first attend to your own well-being, because if you feel spent, if you feel like you're gassed, you're just running on fumes on a Friday night, you're not going to want social connection.
Sure.
So we can talk about, tools of recovery. On a little side note, I'm actually looking forward to when they finally release the data on the psychology of masks. Because when we had to do it, I get it. But I started telling everybody early on, I said, look, when you do this to every human countenance, fear enters in to social relations.
Wow.
Because this is what bandits do. This is what terrorists do. This is what kidnappers do. Okay? People with good intentions don't do this. And so we had to really work on smile with your eyes and, all that, right? Anyone in the service industry was just grilled over and over again how to communicate kindness and caring with their eyes, because we lost the human countenance. I think that's a deeply spiritual thing, right? Let me see your face is such a deeply woven thing in the scriptures. So before we can rebuild human connection, we have to rebuild personal well-being. We really do, because we're isolating ourselves because we're tired. It's as simple as that. We're shot.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So okay, so let's talk about that. And the last time you and I were chatting, I had written a book called Get Your Life Back.
Yeah.
And it was about adopting some humane practices to your life, just for the crazy of the modern world. Like, don't look at your phone first thing in the morning, because you're instantly into the chaos. Like, give yourself some bandwidth in the evening, get off screens. We were talking about things like that, the healing power of nature and that sort of thing. But what we need more than anything else, we were talking about humans being deeply needy beings, that the soul is healed through union with God. And union with God is not something we've taught people how to cultivate and to practice. It's not the same thing as faith. It's not the same thing as doctrine or a healthy creed. The soul is created for intimate union with its creator. And that's where the resiliency is imparted to us, right? I am the vine, you are the branch. We are literally made for a deep, intertwined reality with God. And it is from that place, and I will say that place alone, that we are going to be able to replenish these reserves and heal the trauma of this hour.
I want you to just please bear with me, but the Holy Spirit is wanting to emphasize this truth in this season. So I want to play the last 2 minutes again. We have to get this, folks. We have to get this. Thanks, guys.
So before we can rebuild human connection, we have to rebuild personal well-being. We really do, because we're isolating ourselves because we're tired. It's as simple as that. We're shot.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. And the last time you and I were chatting, I had written a book called Get Your Life Back.
Yeah.
And it was about adopting some humane practices to your life, just for the crazy of the modern world. Like, don't look at your phone first thing in the morning, because you're instantly into the chaos. Like, give yourself some bandwidth in the evening, get off screens. We were talking about things like that, the healing power of nature and that sort of thing. But what we need more than anything else, we were talking about humans being deeply needy beings, that the soul is healed through union with God. And union with God is not something we've taught people how to cultivate and to practice. It's not the same thing as faith. It's not the same thing as doctrine or a healthy creed. The soul is created for intimate union with its creator. And that's where the resiliency is imparted to us, right? I am the vine, you are the branch. We are literally made for a deep, intertwined reality with God. And it is from that place, and I will say that place alone, that we are going to be able to replenish these reserves and heal the trauma of this hour.
How do we get stronger? How do we get refilled, restored after 2 years of crazy, 2 years of new normals, 2 years of loss, 2 years of trauma? How do we rebuild personal well-being? The answer, very simply, folks, the soul is healed through intimate union with God. There's no other shortcut. There's nothing in this world, nothing of this world that can do that. Intimate union with God. Intimate connections with God. I want to share very quickly just four ways that we can fuel our souls and our spirit. Number one, talk to God. Talk to God. In the Bible, it's called prayer. Talk to God. God is waiting to hear from you. Number two, stay in the Word. Meditate on His Word. When we pray, we are speaking to God. When we stay in His Word, when we read His Word, when we read the Bible, God is wanting to speak to us. So stay in the Word. Meditate on His Word. Confess His Word. Memorize His Word. One sentence, one word, one whisper from God will change your life. Stay in the Word. And number three, join a life group. Life groups are a bunch of people who want to grow stronger in God, who are trying to build their faith. Join a life group. You can get more information at the information desk. Put your name down, we'll contact you. But there are currently 16 life groups around. I'm sure we'll be able to find one for you. Join a life group. It's not just about connecting with brothers and sisters. Jesus said this, where 2 or 3 gather together as my followers, I am there among them. So we connect with each other, we connect with God. And then number 4, engage in worship. This is the most important, engage in worship. And today we want to do some corporate. That's why Sunday mornings are so important. When we engage in corporate worship, when we come together as the family, as brothers and sisters, unite our hearts and just express to God what is in us, what is in our hearts, our thankfulness. Don't just sing the words. Connect with God. Allow your spirit to intertwine with Him. The soul is healed through intimate union with God. I'm going to ask you to stand because we're going to do this before we go home. We're going to connect with God. We're going to worship Him. And I believe that today's a day for divine impartation. God loves you. And if you're honest with yourself and you say, you know what, I'm running on empty, God doesn't want to leave you there. God wants to impart into your life today His strength, His joy, because the joy of the Lord is your strength. He wants to impart into your life His peace, His wisdom, His power, His life.